All right, here we go. Hopefully this will turn out okay, since I've threatened all my Wednesday students. Not really threatened, really. You have to watch this. If you don't watch it, you will be behind a week. And I really laid it on thick, so you better be watching. Let me trip over myself. Okay, I have your Should Agamemnon, no, Did He Deserve to Die papers. And what I did, for some of you I might have corrected minor grammar, but what I really wanted to look at is how did you argue it? What was your position and how did you argue it? And everybody did a really good job. You didn't all argue the same side, which is always nice for me to not have to hear the same thing over and over again. But what I did is at the bottom of each of your papers, and this is true for Wednesday too, and the camera's it's pointing up to the sky. It's okay. You know what? It's okay. I put a question for you, something to think about. I don't mean you literally have to answer the question today. You don't have to raise your hand and tell me the answer. It's food for thought, because this is really, I feel like this whole situation is complex, and we have a lot of, maybe you don't. I feel like I have sympathy with the various people involved, and trying to put myself in their pagan mindset. You know, what if that were me and I didn't have God, I didn't know the true God? It's just a losing situation every way around. So it got me thinking and wondering, what sort of powers did these characters have apart from divine grace? As far as, somebody mentioned, maybe Agamemnon could have apologized. Maybe Clytemnestra could have forgiven him. And I'm not saying that there aren't examples of pagans who repent and or forgive, because we know there are. But knowing these characters, were either of them even capable of apology, of repentance, or of forgiveness, living under the, regime of the gods they were living under? So,
I don't know what that says about me, but I didn't even think of that possibility of him just saying, I'm sorry. So.
Well, I don't know. I think it was somebody in here, but I don't remember who it was. It might have been a Wednesday student. And so I just wrote food for thought questions. That was my goal on grading your questions. Like, okay, so how could I take this? And I'm not arguing with your position or anything. It's more just, well, what do you think? And so, but I tried to target my food for thought question based on what you wrote. You did not send me your paper. That's okay. Right, Marta and
I have it written. It's typed out.
I believe in you. All right, while I am up, I'm going to just... Okay, that's better. I'm so professional. I'm never going to get more subscribers until I up my game. I need a theme song. Okay, first thing, let's take a moment. No, actually, first thing is our beautiful Art of the Week. I'm sending an email to all of my Wednesday students, and this is attached. This is another photo that I was able to take. This is at the, there's a museum at Delphi. So when you go to where the oracle was in the Temple of Apollo, where Orestes ran off to, there's, before you go to the actual archaeological site, there's a museum of all the stuff that people have dedicated. Right? We read in Herodotus and all these things, I'm dedicating a golden tripod to Apollo. And so there were treasuries for different cities. And there's a museum of stuff they found at Delphi. A lot of it's been plundered. All right, so a lot of it's in other places. There was a famous, not an obelisk, a pole, but you can just call it a pole. But it's a pole. A pillar, yeah, carved, and it's in Constantinople, apparently. The Emperor of Constantinople took it over. But so one of the famous things that was left behind is this charioteer. I got to tell you, for most of my life, I thought this was a lady. It's not a lady. Apparently, this is, I feel like pants for chariot races would be beneficial, But this was a charioteer garment, and you could cinch it up. That's why the waist, like it's an empire waist dress, you know. And they have a fillet, some sort of gold fillet or leaf fillet, but it just, because of the gown, I think, and it just kind of looked ladyish, and it looked like the hair was curly. I'm like, oh, look at the lady. No, it's not a lady. It is a charioteer. This, we actually know, this was dedicated by Polyzelos, king of Gila, in Sicily, as a thank you Apollo gift, and in 470 BC. This is another one of these bronze statues, like our guy that maybe Zeus, maybe Poseidon, not really sure. And it actually was a whole set. So you can see there are reins. So you're standing here, and then there's a case off to your right when you're looking at, I was going to say her, him, and it's the remains of the chariot that this was in. It was a whole chariot, horses, bronze extravaganza. This was quite a statue once upon a time, but we just have pieces of it left, unfortunately. But he's all in one piece. So while I pass that around, while you're waiting for it, you can turn to page 68. I do have notes. I should not show you that. Then you just think, Mrs. Ferguson's so smart. She knows everything. No, she doesn't. She just holds it up and reads off the back. My ignorance has been exposed. No, that's fine. See, you too can pretend to be smarter than you are by just little helps. See, that was my point. It was when I do this class 4 years from now, I've got my document, and you guys are my test run on my document to see if it's doing so far so good, I think. And if any of my questions are overly lame or there's too many questions. But then next time I don't have to do all this again. Okay, Kaimon. Let's go over the life of Kaimon briefly. And then I want to talk about the Eumenides, and then I want to talk about the papers that you're working on. Who was Kaimon's famous father, and what's he famous for? Miltiades, and who is he?
One of the generals at Marathon.
He was the fabulous general at Marathon, yes, sir.
So I'm just going to say for most of the class, except for Neil, that 90% of us didn't do the reading.
You know what? Because he's honest.
It's just so it's not just like, oh, I don't know.
But so that I can go ahead and just give you the answers.
Yeah.
It's okay. So, but I want to, because I want, does that mean you didn't read the play either?
I read most of the play.
Okay.
I just didn't get to finish it.
Play more important than Plutarch, you know, but is it because people were busy, because people hate Plutarch? Give me some feedback.
It was just because I was busy.
Okay.
Or
But,
somewhere.
okay. So, but, however, the good thing I've done is we've slacked off a lot as Christmas has approached, right?
Yeah.
So I don't know. So I'm, please know that when you give me feedback, I do take it into account. It's too late for you. Too late for you. But 4 years from now, someone might benefit from it.
Other children, guys.
Save other children. But the good news is you have very, very little to do over Christmas break. I am asking you to do something, because we are, but I will take this into consideration as I plan. But that doesn't mean every Neil did it. What did you say?
Were we supposed to finish the paper this week?
Oh no. No. Calm down. Okay, so Kaimon's father was that Miltiades who was the great Battle of Marathon hero, and then decided to go attack an island and jumped over the wall into the sacred district and hurt his leg, and his leg got all infected, and then the Athenians got mad with him and pressed charges, and they had to carry him in the courtroom on a cot, and then he died of his gangrenous wounded leg. Nice.
Is that the most common way people die?
There seem to be a lot of infected legs, don't there? Okay, this has nothing to do with the class. I can't ramble a lot today, but I mean, just think about the world before antibiotics. Oh my gosh, the number of people who got an infection and died. That today you go to the doctor and they give you a jar of 10 days worth of pills and you're fine. It would have killed you. That just blows my mind. That, you know, that they say more people in the Civil War died of infection than on the battlefield. Of course, when you're lopping off legs left and right, it's not good. Anyway, so yes, apparently it was not an uncommon thing before the 20th century. You get an infection and you die. Okay, but Kaimon, anyway, grew up under his dad's shadow. Can you imagine if your parents were super famous?
Like the kids of the president?
Yeah, like if you, and two directions. If your dad was really famous and everybody loved him, then it would be, oh, how can I live up to that? And if your dad was really famous and everybody hated him, that would be even worse, wouldn't it? Because everybody would prejudge you. Oh, I know who your dad is. You're another one just like him. Like, not necessarily. Give me a chance. You might have to. So, and you know what? Fortunately for Kaimon, after Miltiades' tragic death from his infected, wounded leg, after they hated him and fined him, they did not end up hating him. Oh, Miltiades, he had that little, going off attacking those island things. But he was a good guy, saved our behinds at Marathon. Thank you. Kaimon grew up with Miltiades as his dad. And let me put these on. I asked you, what was his attitude towards wealth? And Neil, do you want to say anything, or?
Well, I mean, when he captured one ship or country, he didn't really want the wealth. He just got the slaves, but then he sold the slaves and made more wealth.
Okay, so Neil's
smart with it.
Yeah, so this was a kind of a not trick question. This was a read between the lines question, because there's a paragraph in here that says this is Kaimon's relationship to wealth, but he mentioned several times that he was lazy and greedy. As I'm going through my Kaimon, if I find that line, I will tell you. But Neil is referring to an episode where they took a town, and so they sacked the town, and they're deciding how to split the booty with their allies. And Kaimon says, okay, here's all the people, and here's all the wealth, all the gold and jewels and everything. Which one do you want? And of course, all of his co-workers, his cohorts, and the enemy thought he was a dimwit. I'm like, we'll take the jewels and the gold, thank you very much. I'm like, oh, Kaimon, you're a jerk. Until he sent out messages to their families to ransom them.
So
he got way more money than the guys who took the gold and the jewels out of ransom. He was smart. So,
great.
I want to read this paragraph. This is Plutarch just having a digression, all right? And he says this: for as we would wish that a painter who is to draw a beautiful face in which there is yet some imperfection should neither wholly leave it out, nor yet too pointedly express what is defective. I know it's fine. So if you're drawing someone, some of you take art lessons. Alondra, is Thomas the only one who takes formal art lessons? Okay. But all of you can picture this. You're drawing someone's portrait and they have a huge nose. Let's just go there. The nose is huge. And if you just you can't leave the nose out, because that would be disturbing as well. But if you just don't, if you give them a normal nose, you completely give them a different nose, then it's not a likeness anymore. But you don't also want to draw attention to the nose, because that's just sort of insulting. Do you see? So Plutarch says, just as a painter who is to draw a beautiful face in which there is yet some imperfection should neither wholly leave it out, nor yet too pointedly express what is defective, because this would deform it, and that spoil the resemblance. So, since it is hard, or indeed perhaps impossible, to show the life of a man wholly free from blemish, in all that is excellent, we must follow the truth exactly and give it fully. Any lapses or faults that occur through human passions or political necessities, we may regard rather as the shortcomings of some particular virtue than as the natural effects of vice. This is how he's going to mitigate his lives. He says, you know what? People fall short. People have faults. And maybe instead of saying, Kaimon is a big, fat, greedy jerk, we can say he's deficient in a particular virtue. There's two ways of saying someone's greedy, right? You're greedy, or you are somewhat lacking in charity. All right? And one of them just sounds so much better. One of them is gentler. And so Plutarch tries, he says, to be gentle in his description. I'm so sorry. And may be content without introducing them curiously and officiously into our narrative, if it be out of tenderness to the weakness of nature, which has never succeeded in producing any human character so perfect in virtue as to be pure from all admixture and open to no criticism. This is why people still read Plutarch. You may wonder, why are we still reading Plutarch? First of all, because he's a source for a lot of information about these people's lives that we didn't know otherwise, but also because he tries to be fair. You know, like Themistocles. Think of our life with Themistocles. The man saved Greece, but he was shifty and didn't mind lying. You know, it's just the good and the bad. So Kaimon, actually, so if you get it sometime in the future, read Kaimon if you haven't read it. Is lazy, a little bit greedy, but a fine commander and a nice person. Isn't it funny how you can be all of those? We have books or stories where the villain is really villainous, you know. This is me being a villain. I don't know why that's villainous. But in reality, villains aren't usually just wholly villainous, are they? There's usually something good to be said. Sure, we can all think of some historical personages where there's nothing good to be said whatsoever. And I'm thinking of Hitler, you know. But maybe Hitler was once, you know, nice to a child, or, you know, maybe there was something good there. I don't know. We just don't know about it. I feel like we'll have to reach to come up with something good there. But for most people aren't wholly villainous, and Plutarch's people aren't wholly villainous. It says on page, let me add to this. Hang on. Why do I? Just a second. Everybody be. Oh, okay. Kaimon now grew rich, and what he gained from the barbarians with honor, he spent yet more honorably upon the citizens. Okay, this is another element of another aspect of greed. Why do you want the money? Right? Greed doesn't. Am I correct in saying that if you say someone's greedy, they just want more money? Does it necessarily go on that they want to hold on to all the money? We tend to think that, but I'll have to get a dictionary and look up the word greed. Kaimon kept plenty for himself, but he also used it for other people. He pulled down all the enclosures of his gardens and grounds, and strangers and the needy of his fellow citizens might gather of his fruits freely. Nice. At home he kept a table, plain, but sufficient for a considerable number, to which any poor townsman had free access, and so might support himself without labor, with his whole time left free for public duties. He just had an open table. Nothing fancy, but you can come and eat it if you want. Besides this, he always went attended by 2 or 3 young companions, very well clad. And if he met with an elderly citizen in a poor habit, one of these would change clothes with the decayed citizen, which was looked upon as very nobly done. He enjoined them likewise to carry a considerable quantity of coin about them, which they were to convey silently into the hands of the better class of poor men as they stood by them in the marketplace. Here's the money. I like this. This is reminding me. Our family likes to watch the musical Scrooge every Christmas with Albert Finney. It's a musical, and we watch it every Christmas Eve. And I've seen it a lot of times. And I love the scene at the end after he's transformed and repented. And in this particular musical, he goes and he buys a bunch of stuff, and he just stands on street corners and hands it out. And the people sing the song, "Thank you very much." You know? And I told my husband, you know what I want to do? I just want to go to Hy-Vee and buy 10 bottles of wine and then go stand in the foyer and just hand them to people. Just because I could. But you know, people would look at you like, is there something wrong with this? Is this poisoned? No, I just want to be like Scrooge at the end of the movie and run around handing out bottles of wine. Anyway.
My cousin Mary loves that musical, so we were making cookies with her once, and she's like, "Can you watch Scrooge?" And I'm like, "Okay."
Yes. But Kaimon did it. Kaimon lived it. And he didn't have to be visited by ghosts. That is nice. But as Plutarch said, that when you draw a face, there's good and bad and ugly sometimes. Does Plutarch find any fault with Kaimon? I asked you. Neil, did you find any fault? You didn't find any fault. It says, but if, he'd given an account of all the things he did, all the things he accomplished. By the way, let me fill something in here. I didn't ask you any questions about this. After the Persian War was over, Mardonius, the guy who had stayed behind an extra year at Plataea, and he was toast, and they were all running, this is us, I'll go backwards, running over the Hellespont, the bridge, and going back to Persia. The Greeks followed up on this. So they sent Pausanias, who was the Spartan king, to mop up operations. All the towns in the Hellespont area and along the Ionian coast that were still pro-Persian or fortified by Persia, they were taking them out. So there was war going on, but it was offensive instead of defensive this time, right? This is where Kaimon went. He went, and Pausanias, we met him. He was the guy, I think we read this in Herodotus, where he took them into the Mardonius' tent, and he had them make 2 meals. Do you remember this? A Spartan meal and a sumptuous Persian meal. And he said, look what idiots the Persians are. They have this, and they came to take this away from us. Pausanias, though, unfortunately, fell into the trap of getting to like that Persian lifestyle. And letters came into the hands of the Spartans that he was communicating secretly with the leaders of Persia to defect. And he got in trouble. He also started getting pushy. Commanders are allowed to be pushy. I'm trying to decide how to phrase that. Unfair to his troops, all right? And Kaimon is the one to whom they appealed. Pausanias is a jerk. We'll follow you, but we're not following him anymore. Plus, he's implicated in a treacherous plot and did get called back to Sparta and put on trial for it. Kaimon reaped the benefit of that, right? We love Kaimon. He's fun. Although Plutarch does say, if, although slothful and a drunkard, he could capture so many towns and gain so many victories, certainly if he'd been sober and minded his business, there would have been no Grecian commander either before or after him that could have surpassed him for exploits of war. If he can do that drunk, just imagine what he could have done sober. Wow.
I don't know whether, I'm assuming that that's a compliment of sorts.
I think that's a compliment. Yeah, if you're a lazy drunkard and you can get that much done, just imagine how good you would have been if you hadn't been. All right, the next question I asked you is, Newsflash, Kaimon also got ostracized. I know. It's like everybody in Athens. And I asked you why. I will just read it for you. Kaimon was pro-Sparta. And this is what I mean by that. He liked the Spartan way of life. He thought the Spartans were smart. You know, all this luxury flowing into Athens, it does make people soft. And then they are tempted to cheat people to get more. Like this whole Spartan work ethic. Kaimon liked it. He named 2 of his kids Spartan names. Oh, I'm not going to be able to find it. He gave them names of Spartan towns or Spartan kings. And for a while, everybody in Athens thought that was kind of charming. Isn't that cute? Kaimon really likes. And which, you know, I don't feel like there's a lot of slothful drunkards in Sparta, which is interesting. Maybe sometimes we admire things that we aspire to be, but we aren't yet. Anyway, eventually though, when Athens and Sparta weren't getting along so well, this didn't play real well. He's a Sparta lover. And this got him ostracized. Plutarch says, the Spartans were having some trouble being attacked by neighboring people, and they asked Athens for help. And Athens came and helped them and went back home. But the next time, they sent a second time to desire the succors of the Athenians against the Messenians and the Helots, remember their slave population that revolts, who had seized upon Ithome. But when they came, fearing their boldness and gallantry, of all that came to their assistance, they sent them only back, alleging they were designing innovations. All the cities came to help Sparta, but Sparta said to Athens, "We don't want you. You go home," because they were afraid of them. Well, obviously, Athens is offended. What do you mean you don't want us? Kaimon, you Sparta lover. You're a jerk, because the Spartans are jerks. And they ostracized him just because he liked Sparta and admired Sparta, which I hope you think doesn't seem very fair. It doesn't seem very fair to me. Okay, and then last question, and then we'll get into the play. Yeah, and then we get angry at New York City. Yeah, you New York City people, leave. We don't want your kind here. We don't serve your kind here. Kaimon was in the same battle that Themistocles committed suicide to avoid. Remember, the king of Persia was going to go against the Greek fleet because the Greek fleet was messing around in Egypt and messing around in Cyprus and on the Ionian coast and messing with Persian holdings. And he said, Themistocles, get ready, because we're going to war. And Themistocles says, no, I will be drinking. I told all my students about the bull's blood, by the way, being not necessarily perhaps blood, but just the nickname of a poison, which is, this is the most exciting thing I've learned all year so far.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Kaimon died fighting in the same sea battles against the Persians. And I asked you, how did the relationship between Greek cities changed after Kaimon's death? Let me read what I was fishing for, okay? After his death, there was not one commander among the Greeks that did anything considerable against the barbarians. And instead of uniting against their common enemies, the popular leaders and partisans of war animated them against one another, to that degree that none could interpose their good offices to reconcile them. And while by their mutual discord they ruined the power of Greece, they gave the Persians time to recover breath and repair all their losses. I think we can all see, I'm sure we could probably sit here and brainstorm a bunch of times in history this has happened. You unite, against a common enemy. But as soon as you turn and start fighting with each other, you give the enemy a break and you ruin yourself.
The entire history of love.
Yes, yes. And so this is going to be the history of Greece for our second semester. We're going to read Thucydides' Peloponnesian War. Sparta and Athens are going to get into it to the point where this tiny country whose people banded together to drive out the biggest power of the world can't get along. And there is a winner, and if you don't know who wins the Peloponnesian War, I'm not going to tell you, but I will tell you nobody really wins. Because Greece is ruined because of the constant fighting, changing sides, fighting. All right, it's depressing. Speaking of depressing, Orestes is being chased by Furies with gorgon-headed hair, snake hair, and just, it's ugly. The whole situation is very ugly. I think I told you this last week. They say, I can't remember if Aristotle wrote this or where I got this, that in the opening scene of this play, when the doors open and you see the Furies surrounded, they're sleeping at the beginning, and because Apollo has put them to sleep. But when they get up and they start talking, that people fainted in the audience because they were so hideous. There's must have been some masks.
Must have been really good match.
Yeah.
Or really bad.